some group of Boko Haram sects came to our house. They forced the door and opened it, and then they gathered all of us in the small parlor, and they tied my husband and 3 of my children. So they started asking him for money. He told them where the money is in the bedroom. They went there and they took it. They started asking my children and my husband to denounce Christ, in which they refused. They forced them to lie down on the ground flat. So after slaughtering him, they started with the other boy. They asked him to deny Christ. He refused, and they slaughtered him. They went next to the other boy and they slaughtered him too. All of them refused to denounce Christ. So after some minutes, my husband died, and 2 of the children were fortunate. They were carried to the hospital by some security men, and some surgeries were made on them. By His grace, they survived it. I was not angry with God because I know something like that can happen. And as a Christian, one has to be prepared for this anytime. So I was not angry with God. And even those that killed my husband, I know most of them are ignorant. That is why they did it.
After her 2 sons had recovered from their injuries, Amina took her family and fled the area, since it was discovered they were still in danger from Boko Haram. 5 years after this attack, Amina had another dramatic encounter with a Boko Haram group while on the way to a funeral.
So we were attacked by the same Boko Haram sect. They opened a fire sporadically on our van. We were 16 in the bus, and then 5 were men and 11 of us were female. So they killed them directly in the bus, and they went away with all of us together with them, with the men. 5 of us were injured. That's the bullet injury with us. I was one of them. Even now I have the scars with me on my body. And after 5 weeks there, we were interviewed by their second in command, that's their vice president there in Sambisa. After that, we stayed there for 8 months in hardship, trauma, fear. God gave us the grace to stand by our faith. I say in my mind, if I live for Christ, and if I die, it's gain, which is in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. I have this in mind, and I stood by it.
After experiencing severe hardship and trauma for 8 months, Amina and 9 other women were finally released. Now, 10 years later, Amina has come to terms with her husband's death and his murderers.
It was not easy, but the Bible told me that I have to forgive so that I can be forgiven. That is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 14, that says that we have to forgive so that we can be forgiven. So I have to do that as a believer.
Amina says she's very grateful for the help that she has received from the Voice of the Martyrs Canada and their partners in Nigeria to build her a house.
I really appreciate their efforts, and I pray that God will continue sustain them with their families, and this humanitarian work that they are doing, it is wonderful.
Cheryl, we were just talking about how some people have to handle so much in this life, just one tragedy after another. And yet there is a sense of hope in Amina's voice, in her story. She's not ever without hope.
And forgiveness.
And forgiveness.
And continuing on. It's just amazing. And I
Yeah.
love what the Voice of the Martyr Canada is doing for her, building her a house, taking care of her. And Crossroads Cares is actually partnering Voice of the Martyrs Canada in a new initiative that are going to help young women who have been through things like Amina has gone through, being brutalized by terrorists and abusers in that part of Nigeria. So many women have experienced sexual assault, persecution from their families or communities because of their faith, child marriage, even kidnapping. Many of them, we've seen it on the news, right? Groups of women kidnapped by Boko Haram, as we saw with Amina.
Absolutely. The brighter side to the story is there is a home in this conflict-ridden era, called Mara's House, which takes these young girls, ages between 15 and 25, in and helps them to recover from the trauma they've experienced. Yeah. But they need to have more capacity, Cheryl. The need is there as the numbers of traumatized women keeps rising, keeps growing. So we want to be able to help them construct a second floor of the dormitory so that more than 200 women can live there.
Oh, just amazing. And so there they can receive healing, hope for the future. They have education, they receive medical care, vocational and small business training, farming, pastoral care. And one thing I've learned, and I've gone around the world, I've met people who are experiencing persecution. The only thing worse than experiencing all of that terror and trauma is knowing that your brothers and sisters around the world have just forgotten about you and are living in safety and kind of not really caring. And so we want them to know they're not forgotten, that we see them, that we stand with them, and that healing too is possible, Mark, because they don't have to stay in that trauma.
No, you're absolutely right, which is why we're here today. And we need to raise $120,000 to make this second floor possible in this dormitory for these women, to create more beds, more space for this rehabilitation, healing, education, medical care to be given to these women in these deplorable, atrocious situations that they find themselves in. So we want to make this 800 number available to you to call and contribute to this $120,000 goal. The number is 1-800-265-3100, or you can go to crossroads.ca/Nigeria, and we will get that support to the greatest need there.